Welcome back to the Kudlow Report. So, breaking news tonight as the political games continue in Washington. Minutes ago, the Senate passed a bill 7912 that will avoid a government shutdown, and it will fund FEMA's emergency money. But the bigger question is the Joint Congressional Committee to cut $1.2 trillion from the deficit over the next decade. The president wants tax hikes coupled with Medicare cuts. Republicans disagree. Can it be resolved? All right, we've got reaction from both houses of Congress tonight. From the House, we are joined by Marcy Kaptur, Democrat from Ohio. And from the Senate, we're joined by Mike Lee, Republican from Utah. Thanks to both of you. Senator Lee, can I just get your take on this continuing resolution? FEMA money, yes, but were there any offsetting spending cuts at all?
Well, it's a continuing resolution. It continues funding essentially at levels where we have been. This does represent, depending on which accounting method that you follow, some kind of arguable cut. It is not as much of a cut as was proposed under the Paul Ryan budget passed by the House earlier this year, but it does have something that one could characterize as a cut in it. The question is, how much are we going to cut? And the big question for that relates to what the super committee will propose later this year.
All right, that's just where I wanted to go. Thank you for that. Ms. Kaptur, welcome to the show. We appreciate it very much. The president says he wants tax hikes. He's got $1.5 trillion in tax hikes coupled with Medicare cuts and other assorted spending reductions. The Republicans say no. Let me ask you, Ms. Kaptur, given the sorry state of the economy, is this any time to be raising taxes?
Well, I'll tell you what, I think everybody ought to pay their fair share, and I'm really glad that we're finally helping the American people with some disaster relief. Out here in Cleveland, Avon Lake, Lorain, and Sandusky, people want to go to work. They want to help America build her way forward. If everybody were working, we wouldn't have a revenue problem. We need to concentrate on jobs, not all these political stunts that the Senate just performed, now taking us till November 18th, and people are losing money in annuities, in their stock investments on Wall Street. We saw what the market did about a week ago. We have to provide confidence as a government of the United States. We have to grow up and stop this these fits and starts that happen every few days. It really isn't very responsible at this very delicate time in our economy, Larry. So I think everybody's got to pay their fair share.
All right, Senator Lee, pay their fair share. What does that mean?
Well, I couldn't agree more with what was said a moment ago about the fact that we need job creation. In order for that to happen, we have to perpetuate the promise that Americans have always had, which is that if they'll invest and place their capital at risk, they'll be able to keep most of the rewards of that risk that they've taken. Now, we disincentivize that kind of behavior, which is necessary to create jobs, every time we impose more severe tax burdens on those creating jobs, on corporations and on individuals who very often will operate small businesses as individuals and who will be subject to some of those higher top marginal income tax rates. So I don't think this is a good time to raise taxes, certainly. In fact, I agree with what President Obama said not too long ago, which is that a down economy is the worst possible time to raise taxes, especially because that's when we most need job creation, and that's the sort of thing that kills job creation.
Ms. Kaptur, let me just ask you on some specifics. Everybody pay their fair share. The top 1% of income taxpayers pay 40%. It's really lopsided. And when you go into this millionaire's tax, which is the recent hot issue, turns out that those over $1 million have an effective tax rate of 30%. Those making $50,000 to $75,000 have an effective tax rate of about 12%. In other words, don't we have a very progressive code already? And shouldn't the emphasis be on the incentives and rewards that the senator talked about to grow the economy?
I think we have to be careful how taxes are levied. And I like the president's proposal because he wants to put tax cuts in the pockets of the middle class, so we fuel consumer spending and we help businesses have more customers. I think for those folks like those Wall Street bankers that took all those big bonuses and harmed our country, gravely harmed our country, you know what I say? It's time for some good old patriotism.
Yeah, but is it time to stop bashing them? I mean, after all, government had a lot to do with the crack-up. I understand
Sir,
about
you know
the
what?
resentment
Government
against
picked
bailouts.
up the pieces. Government picked up the pieces.
But the government made
they ought
money
to be
off
eating
of that
their
deal.
own mistakes, not push the burdens on the American people.
So do we just keep punishing well-to-do people, Senator Lee? Is that the way this is going to work?
Well, no, it's not going to work. I mean, look, for the tax bracket that she's talking about, even if we just confiscated all of their wealth, all of their earnings, 100% tax rate, that still wouldn't even come close to balancing our budget. What we need is a more stable tax system, one in which we lower the rates, we broaden the base, we make it simpler and easier to enforce and easier to comply with. Once that happens, Americans are going to be feeling a lot more comfortable investing, especially if that's accompanied by significant regulatory reform, as my colleague Susan Collins mentioned a few minutes ago. That's what we need right now. But right now, this administration is putting a gigantic wet blanket on this economy, and that's killing job creation. We've got to get past this class warfare, which is killing job growth.
Let me tell you, in my part of Ohio, the automotive industry is recovering because of this administration. Our people want to work. They don't want to have all these Chinese imports coming in here. All our supplier chains, we need customers to buy the cars. That's why the president's proposals to reduce taxes for the middle class, to give it a little bounce for small business, for example, making it easier for small businesses to hire, giving them an opportunity to buy health insurance at affordable prices. That's really where jobs are being created. You know, a lot of these big companies, sir, they're offshoring our jobs. We've seen that over the last quarter century. This president's talking about make it in America, invest from Cleveland along Lake Erie, South Shore, all the way to Toledo, and you'll see America recover.
Senator Lee, I'll give you the last word. Will we have the wherewithal and the incentives and the reward structure to produce the way Ms. Kaptur is talking about producing?
Well, we will have the will as Americans to do the right thing. But the will that Americans have been expressing is for government to get out of the way. The reason these jobs are moving offshore is because we're crippled by what is arguably the highest corporate income tax rate in the world. We're crippled by a regulatory structure that imposes nearly $2 trillion a year in regulatory compliance costs. We cannot create jobs at the pace that we desperately need right now unless the federal government makes a conscious decision to get out of the way. But these are the competing philosophies about government that you have between Democrats and Republicans right now, and I welcome this debate.
I hear you. I've got to leave it there. Thank you very much, Ms. Marcy Kaptur, House member, and Senator Mike Lee.